everyone, to Everything is Attitude. I had to think about the title too. Is that bad? We've done enough of them. I should not. That should be second nature to me. Welcome, Rosemary. How are you? I know you've been
I was about to say,
as you cough. I know you've
sorry,
been a little sick
sorry, I
too.
was about to say, sorry, that I'm much better now, which I am.
Can we just say right away that it is not coronavirus, right?
No, don't start with that. We're going to be talking enough about that. Come on. No, 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 no. It is type A influenza and bronchitis, which, what you're hearing in my voice when it sort of, or if I'm coughing, it's the breathlessness. I've still got, traces of the bronchial stuff, but that's normal for me. So just let me tell everyone that is a perfectly normal situation for me because every single winter time I suffer usually with pneumonia, and usually it's bronchial pneumonia. So I've avoided pneumonia this year and just got the type A influenza, which is bad enough, but still. Anyway, enough about my health. I'm very well. Thank you to everybody out there who's been sending me healing, who's been sending me healing prayers, and who's been thinking about me. Thank you for all your well wishing. So, hello, Al, and yes, it's great to be back on Everything is Attitude. What with my being ill and you working and family stuff, and I do believe that you went to a memorial service last week, so that
Yes, yes.
negated that. So between the two of us, we've been extremely lax in doing this show. But here we are, we're doing this show now. And this is really hard for me. However, what is the subject tonight, Al? Would you like to tell
Um,
everyone what the subject is
the
tonight?
subject tonight is well, we said originally mass hysteria, right? To make it really dramatic.
Well, actually, you don't need to make it any more dramatic than it is because it's
Yes,
already, I think,
yes,
a
and
little bit,
I
a
thought
little
of
bit
it because
mass hysteria.
yes, I thought of it because I went with my wife Christine to just go weekly shopping for different meats and dairy and that kind of thing. And we went in, and the store was like I guess pre-apocalyptic because there were no. I mean, people everywhere. When we got to the register, the gentleman said, "Yeah, last Sunday we actually set a record for the store, an all-time record for the store for sales of this past Sunday." And we looked, and we were just trying to get like basic stuff that we usually get, and there were no cans, no pasta, a few random open bags of rice, that people were picking up and using. So, it was quite the scene of people just uh, running around like crazy, and some people were like really getting crazy and zipping around and grabbing things, and other people were kind of just relaxed and calm and just going through the store and getting what they needed and being polite to other people. But to see the range of emotions of that crowd was pretty eye opening. And so, yes, mass hysteria is our thing.
I think that people are allowing their fears to overcome their common sense. Now, I know people can listen to me, they look at me, they say, well, it's all right for her. She's sitting pretty in a place where, it's the sun is shining, it's warm. They don't have, too much of stuff going on. She's in her own home. I bet she's got a freezer full of stuff. Well, I might have a half a freezer full of stuff. It's true. Um, and people tend to think, well, it's all right for her. She doesn't have to worry about it. But I do have a daughter and a grandson who live in New York City. And yesterday it was announced and confirmed today that Donald Trump is closing the borders. And it's going to affect, I think, most cities, and it is going to affect food supplies, and it is going to affect, lots of. It's going to actually affect the economy. a great deal. So I do get that there are fears, worries, and so on. And I do understand. My daughter called me yesterday and asked me if I could send her a list of the things that she might need in case of emergencies, which I did do. Things like canned food, dried food, toilet paper, paper towels. Although when I was growing up, in my toilet we had squares of newspaper, and let me tell you, they work just as well. Uh, we can live without a lot of what we used to, but despite the fact that there will be certain repercussions in as food, you know, we rely on those massive trucks to deliver food to the different supermarkets and so on, don't we? And so I'm sure that eventually that'll be affected. I know that in England, I had a friend who said, she was concerned because I'm planning a trip to Italy in the summertime, and I can see all of you out there raising your eyebrows, thinking, surely she's not going to go to Italy. But we're planning a trip to Italy in the summertime, and my friend in England said that the government there is considering quarantine, and that if there were this scare, and I were to go into the country, then I'm likely to face a 2-week quarantine. So the governments are taking precautions, as they should. Schools, colleges, as they should, are taking precautions. However, let's address this craziness that is going on here. A friend of my daughter's is a doctor in one of the main hospitals in New York, and she was just shaking her head and talking about how crazy it is, because people with sort of the regular summer, winter cold, should I say, the sniffles. Yeah.
We can't we can't hear you, Rosemary. Nope, you went out. You still can't hear you. Nope, nope. We lost it. You want to jump out and jump back in? No. Was that the old telephone commercial? Can you hear me now? We cannot hear you. I could read your lips, but we cannot hear you. Maybe drop off and come back in. Nope. So, Lori, yes, Italians do know how to make their own pasta. As long as you have the flour, right? We can make our own pasta for sure. Lori asked as a question. I think we're waiting on Rosemary to come back now. Um, let's see. And yeah, we got you back. Let me add you to the stream. And you're crooked, so you just have to turn
Hold on,
the.
it's this thing. Hold
Yeah,
on.
there you go.
And there we are. There, you've got me
So
back.
I just said Lori actually said and asked the question. Italians know how to make their own pasta anyway, right, Al? And she's she is right, but that's the thing. Like you really. I think we forget that we're resourceful as humans too, and most of us have enough stuff and could make things that we don't normally make, use things like you said that you don't normally use, if it comes down to it. And I think I just want to differentiate or separate. I think both you and I understand the weight of this virus and what it can do, especially to older folks. Right? It's a very serious thing. What we're talking about is how you react to that aspect, how you react to this kind of incoming storm, if you would, right? That or a tsunami where the water's kind of pulling out now, and the big wave is coming, right? So, or the potential for the big wave is there. We're not talking about the severity of this because it is a very serious thing that we have to be concerned with, right? We're talking about how you handle something like this because there's always something like this or multiple somethings like this in our lifetimes, right? That whether it's a snowstorm or a hurricane or a tornado or a flood, whatever it is, there's always something like this a few
I,
times in our life.
and I think it's we should be mindful of the fact that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the world who struggle, excuse me, struggle every day with situations that are not happy situations or they're not healthy situations. And, we need to sort of step back, I think, from the fear that we have. Step back and take a breath and look at this from a common sense point of view. If this were to happen, if the food stores were affected and so on. And by the way, Italy, who's had it's had the most severe effect on Italy so far. Uh, Samantha told me the stores are still open. They still have food in the shops. They still have stuff going on, and I think it's really important for us to, I mean, this is, yes, it's a serious situation. Yes, it's nobody wants to get this virus, but there are so many other things out there in the world that can happen. On the turn of a dice, our world can be turned upside down. People talk about, well, what if for some reason we didn't have internet anymore? Well, what did we do before we had it then? Um, you know,
Rosemary, we were at the doctor with my son the other day. Really, really great doctor we went to, but he was giving a few statistics about what actually ended up killing people, and the one that stood out to me is he said one in every 250 people will die from a car crash. So we still drive cars, right? So there are always these things out there, but I think the panic and the swell of everybody worrying about just one thing um, it's a phenomenon of sorts, right? It's just people just kind of get caught up in, and you don't know if the danger is what the problem is, or the hysteria is more than the danger, or somewhere in
I
between.
think personally, I think it's the fear and the hysteria that is the danger, because it escalates the problem. It escalates whatever problem that there is. Um, I was talking this morning about, in days gone by, the lynch mob mentality. You find people jumping on the bandwagon of, let's say, hysteria, born from fear, out of fear. In days gone by, when people used to pick up stones and stone the whatever the culprit was deemed to be. In some countries, they stone people alive. In the Wild West, not that long ago, there were lynch mobs all the time. That there is this sort of communal mentality, this collective mentality that can actually infect us. It is infectious,
It's
and
a great word, Rosemary. That's what it is.
well,
Exactly.
it is.
Yeah.
It is infectious, and you find people that person who is a quiet, kind, gentle, loving person who would never harm anyone will pick up a stone and throw a stone, joining in with that infectious, crazy, mentality that's, that is, it's like this collective mentality. Or the people who were part of that lynch mob who then slunk away afterwards, ashamed, ashamed and embarrassed because they would normally not do something like that. And we have to be aware of this. In this, I think, rather than the virus, uh, of course we have to be aware of it, and of course we have to take precautions against it, but I think the biggest enemy that we have is the infection of this collective mentality, which tells us to rush out, ignore everybody else on the planet, get what you want, grab what you want off the shelves, forget anybody else, just grab what you need for your family, and forget the fact that your neighbor might not have pasta. Who cares?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I'm saying? People
Yeah.
get that, they get into this frenzied, uh, uh, uh,
State. Yeah.
attitude, they
Yeah.
get into this frenzied state, which then infects. I mean, if you're sitting around as a family and the mother is panicking, the children are going to panic,
That's
and
exactly
everybody
right.
else is, and they're going to set
Exactly right.
off their friends, and so on and so forth. And it is an infection which is far worse, in my opinion. It is far worse because it creates fear upon fear upon fear. It creates this terrible fear of everybody feeling out of control. So let's be in control at least, to get in as much food, as much toilet paper, as much as we possibly can. Let's protect ourselves. And it we don't even have the evidence that it's a massive major epidemic, because at the moment it is not.
Right. Right. And the stuff that's happening now is it does spread rapidly and it can be dangerous. And I think we're actually being smart and taking precautions by closing things down so it
Yes,
doesn't spread any
yes,
further.
yes,
Um,
I
I,
agree.
I remember Hurricane Superstorm Sandy when I was on Long Island a few years back. Superstorm Sandy wiped out a lot of. I mean, Samantha was probably in the city too. I mean, it wreaked havoc in that area, and uh, there was basically no way to get gas onto Long Island, gasoline for cars, and it broke down so much that there were multiple stories of people with guns going to gas stations because they wanted gas over someone else. Now this is gas, and yes, you need a car to some degree, but if it really came down to it, you could walk off the island through the city, and it's like you could do that if it really came down to it. So, but that mentality, like you're saying, that sort of gang or lynch mob mentality, it's crazy, but if you flip to the other side, the human side of it, if you have a neighborhood and you have a family there that doesn't have enough food, I guarantee most of those neighbors would share some of their food so that that family didn't starve. So it's really like as a society, that mass, intelligence is really not that intelligent, right? That the intelligence of the masses is not that great. But then when you get down to the human side of it, most of the time people will help others. Most of the time people will support each other. And it's not that grab the last can off the shelf, it's mine, not yours mentality, right?
Well, I'm going to say that it's fear that drives people to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. But if we look back in history, in every country in the world, there have been, diseases, plagues, you name it. In London, I mean, you had that the plague, the Black Plague, and you had it was people would have crosses painted on their doors. This family's infected, so on and so forth. I mean, I'm, we're not anywhere near that.
Right.
And if we were anywhere near that, we have resources. We have the army. We have a battalion of doctors and nurses throughout this country, and in the Western world. We have a battalion of people who can come out and help us. The tanks are not out yet, people in the streets. So, we're not. This is not a national disaster that we're facing. But the more we allow this fear to infect us and to drive us to doing things that are crazy, the more this situation will escalate, and the more out of control it will be, and the more potential there is for serious situations which will actually have nothing to do with the coronavirus.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
it's so, what sort of an attitude then, Al, should we be promoting here? What could we tell people is a good thing to do? I mean, you can't just lay back and ignore it, because that would be just a dumb thing to do. That would be stupid. But how can we help people to understand that, you know, that you might not have control of your
So
neighbors
I
or
would
your
I would say be be aware, but stay calm. And the thing that's really glaring in my mind is the old love thy neighbor, right? Be considerate of others, be considerate of your neighbors. Understand you don't have to buy 50 cans of beans off the shelf. Be responsible in what you think you might use for the short term, because the reality is, you may have the money to buy a whole bunch of food right now, but someone else may be living week to week, and when they come back next week, they really may not be able to eat because there's not enough left on the shelves. So I think those that can afford will go out and buy like crazy, but those who cannot are going to suffer because of really most people gorging on the food that really is probably overkill, um, in general, as far as what they actually need at this stage of the game, with the coronavirus or anything that comes our way, right?
I think that what uh, we have to make a decision. We have to just take a breath. We have to stop, take a breath. We have to just calmly say, what kind of a person am I? Am I that person who wants to be driven by fear? Or am I, despite my fear, because we're all fearful and to some uh, excuse me, to some degree or another, not necessarily about the coronavirus, but we're all fearful of some of things in one way or another. But I think that this, is a major test for those of us who say, um, you know, we have faith. We have faith in God. We have faith in our angels. We have faith in a higher being. We have a faith in the natural order of things. So, although, yes, take precautions, make sure you wash your hands, make sure your house is as clean as you could possibly get it. Make sure that you do all of the right things. If you're going to go into a crowd of people and you don't need to, don't do it then. Just pay attention to, to what you're actually doing. But there is a point where you have to just say, or if you want sanity in your life, I think there's a point where you have to start to live your belief. It's not enough to say I believe. You have to live your belief, do all of the things that you need to do, but also to accept if it's my time and God determines that it's my time. I believe that he, she, or it's that God force that is out there that we all believe in, or most of us believe in. You know, whatever is going to happen is meant to be for our good. It's meant to be the right thing to do. And to sort of step back and take a breath, do the things you need to do. By all means, stock your cupboards with some things, but do please remember that your friends and neighbors and the people who are, around the corner, they'll need stuff as well. So, be mindful of that. Be mindful of other people. Be mindful of where you are. Be mindful that your children do all of the right things, that they wash their hands when they come in from playing, that they you don't go out into mass crowds and so on and so forth. I think there's one state that is now refusing to have concerts above 5,000 people, which makes me smile, because if the coronavirus is around, why not? I mean, why do they pick the 5,000 number? Do they think that 5,000 is safe? It's stupid. It's ridiculous. So just be mindful, and don't do anything that puts you or is likely to put you in harm's way. For instance, my daughter has always taken her son to school on the subway. She's no longer using the subway. It makes sense because,
Yeah.
if you've ever been on a subway, boy, is there ever a place that nurtures germs and
Yes.
viruses. Um, so they've stopped taking the subway, but try and do the best that you can do, but then there's this little word, trust that you're doing what you can do, trust that you're doing what you can do in a way that is right, and don't allow that fear to eat you up or to drive you into doing things or saying things or behaving in a way that you normally wouldn't do, and trust that there is a plan. And you know, if it's your time, it's your time. But if it's not your time, you are not going, no matter how sick you might get, with whatever infectious disease you might get. If it's not your time, you will not be going.
And
So
if it is your time and this is the way you're supposed to go, you can be as
well, yeah,
careful as you want to be, and it's not going to
it
change.
won't make a difference. That's not an indication that we shouldn't be careful, though. That's not an indication that we
No.
should ignore. You know, we have to do the right thing. You know, but it's
Well, I
like,
mean,
you know,
being careful and being aware is it's very different than getting consumed by what's going on, right? Like you have to be aware. Yes, you have to understand that there are dangers. Don't take the subway in these kind of situations. Don't go out and like even I had a couple meetings today and people joked around and bumped elbows instead of shaking hands. But it's an adjustment. But it's a fun adjustment. It's not, it's, hey, this is out there. We'll bump elbows instead. So the greeting was still there, but we just made an adjustment and we made light of what's going on, to take
and
precaution.
you're not, in doing that, you're not making light of what is going on. You're finding a way to deal with it
Right.
that
Exactly.
lightens your load, that
Right.
lightens
Exactly.
the fear
Exactly.
of
And that's what I
you.
mean by that. Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And you know, and I think that you know, people, we all talk about our belief in God. I mean, come on, almost everybody I talk to says I believe. There are some who don't, that's fine. But a huge majority of people believe in God or in a higher force. The people who watch this, our show, and the people who are following us certainly are those people who believe in that higher force, and that, you know, that positive and a beautiful God force that is out there. Could you just do everything you can possibly do to keep yourself safe without panicking, and literally then hand it over to God?
And it
hand
and
hand it over.
And it's not listen, I think I've spoken about my son with his autoimmune, and my sister has a compromised immune. So it's not an easy thing to stay calm with, and I'm not suggesting it should be, because it is something that worries, right? It is something that is concerning, especially when you have people in your circle that could be really affected by this. So I'm not saying, I don't think you are either, that it's an easy thing to stay calm about, but that's what everything's attitude is about, right? It's persevering with your attitude, even under the dire circumstances, or the circumstances where you're under duress, or it's a really challenge to have that positive attitude, or have an attitude of calm in this case, and kindness and understanding in this case, right?
Yeah, I think that you know, there have been many examples that I can give of times when I personally have been in crisis, and I mean, you know, real crisis, life threatening, life, you know, life crises. um, and I I'm not saying hand it over to God as a way to get out of the responsibilities, our own responsibility to do what we can. And I'm not saying hand it over to God, oh, it's easy because, you know, let Him have it. It is not an easy thing to do. But when you have a true faith, and you really have a true faith in, you know, the process of life, and that God force that surrounds us, and you know, and sort of motivates and drives and guides and steers us, um, you know, in a crisis is when I think we can really put our faith to the test, to take a breath. And when something is just simply too big for us, we do what we can, and but at a certain point we can only do so much. And to then be able to say to God, or to that God force, or whatever it is that you believe in, to say, this is, it's like saying a prayer, if you like, this is too big for me. It's too big for
Right.
me to
And,
handle.
and
I'm a merely human. It's too big for me. So I'm handing it over. Now here's the deal. Once you hand it over, the trick is, which is not easy, the trick is then you have to let go. You can't interfere.
Right.
You
And I think, Rosemary, you actually made me think of another aspect of this too, and probably something that should go into that recipe. Uh, I think people start thinking about two or three or four or five levels up that this can go, right? Like they're in their minds, most people say, well, what if it wipes out half the population? What if it like, what if the food supply runs out? What if there's not enough for my family? And they're jumping like 10 steps that you may never get to step two, and they're already on step 10 or 11 or 12. And yes, be aware that is that a way outside chance, and prepare and be careful, and have that at least a little bit on your mind maybe, but people really go to that crazy level right away, and that
fear.
causes the fear, that causes the panic,
Well,
that
I
causes
think
the,
it's the
yeah,
fear that drives the what ifs.
right. and
You
then and then inversely
start to
comes right
panic,
back.
and then
Yeah,
well, this is what I'm saying. It's an infectious thing
yeah,
because the more you have it, the more it takes hold of you, and the bigger the fear gets. So it's infectious thinking. It's an infectious way of thinking. So my recipe for today is: can we have some infectious positive thoughts? Can we be infected by the fact that God decides at the end of the day? Can we be infected by the idea that God decides, and we reside with God in that, within that God force? And and here's the worst of it. The worst of it is that we all die, but we don't die anyway. So you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm, I'm not saying, trust me, I'm anybody out there thinking I'm predicting. I am not predicting. What I predict is that it is not nearly as severe a situation as people are allowing in their own imaginations. That if we stay calm and focused on doing what we can do and leaving the rest to God, our medical resources, our our educators, those our armed forces, then
our own common sense, and
our own
being, yeah,
common sense. We are not helpless victims wallowing about in this. There is so much help out there for all of us. So and a lot of people have gotten this virus who have perfectly well survived it. And in fact, more people have died of type A influenza, which is what I just had. More people have died of type A influenza than they ever have of this. What I'm saying is, I'm not making less of it. I'm asking that we put it into perspective, and we have an attitude of perspective.
yes.
Do we have any comments?
We do. We have a few comments. Lori is here, and a couple comments from Lori. She said, "In any emergency, always check your own pulse first." That's very good advice.
I love
Meaning,
that.
meaning,
That's
meaning
great.
stay calm. Yes. Maggie says hello, Rosemary and Al. She also says this whole thing is ridiculous. A guy at work is constantly saying he's going to get it, and I tell him to stop sending bad juju to himself. And Lori says every year we need to be prepared for flu season, and we do, right? And it's these same precautions that everybody's taking now, and you wonder, are they taking these precautions every year for flu season? To be, to wash their hands, and not touch their eyes and their nose and all that stuff, right?
Well,
Um,
I was talking this morning. I was telling people this morning that I could not, because I was not eligible for the pneumonia shot or the flu shot. I went before Christmas to try to get it. I was refused it 3 times, and so what am I going to do then? Am I going to cry? Am I going to panic, or am I going to take matters into my own hands? And I mean, that's exactly what I did. So I'm suggesting that people, what I did was I went to a Chinese herbalist and I got some brilliant stuff, which really, really worked. And for the first time in 5 years, I did not have pneumonia. There are ways we can help ourselves. Go on the web, Google, what you need to take to boost your immune system.
and then there's a lot of great natural stuff out there.
Yes, and there
For you
are a
to-
lot of people who cannot afford to have the medicines that are available out there for a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who are not eligible for these medicines. So find natural ways to do it. So get on Google, guys.
And you could do that. You could do that through.
Possibilities.
You could do that through cooking, garlic and mushrooms.
Yeah,
If you could
yeah.
handle
I
all
mean,
that stuff. Yeah.
the guy that Laurie's talking about, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Rather than say I'm going to get it, how about I'm going to check to see what it is I need to take or what it is I need to do to boost my immune system, so that if I do get it, I'm able to fight it. How about that? So difference in changing your attitude.
Maggie,
Any other comments? And
yeah, Maggie writes. Yesterday I had some rice. It's funny. It's not. It's good that she's okay, but yes, it's funny as I read it. Yesterday I had some rice with lunch. She swallowed the grain of rice wrong and started coughing. And the person that was worried about the coronavirus said he automatically said I had coronavirus. After I stopped choking, I told him it was rice-a-roni or rice.
I know, really? Come on, everybody. It's like, it's only 2 years ago. And I remember this quite clearly because a friend of mine, and actually my sister, cancelled her trip to America because of the scare with mosquitoes. Do you remember that? It's only
Yeah,
3 years ago that happened. We don't hear anything about it anymore. Suddenly, I mean, did they find a cure or what, or are they still out there? Somebody mentioned this morning about the killer bees.
I
Where
was
are
going
these
to say
killer
the killer
bees that,
bees.
you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah,
So
the
again,
migrating killer bees.
not
Yeah.
not making light of it, and there are people who are affected by it, but can we keep things in perspective? And I think keeping things in perspective, taking the necessary actions to make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation where you could perhaps be in danger of getting such a thing. In fact, or if you possibly can, avoid subways. If you possibly can, don't go into crowds. Always wash your hands, when you come in from wherever you've been outside. If you go shopping or if you're touching something, make sure you've got, and people say, well, the stores are all out of sanitizer.
The crazy thing is, if you think about everybody
How about
rushing
soap
to,
and water?
yeah, the crazy thing is, if you think about people rushing to the stores, it's probably perpetuating the virus because everybody's going to one location and
Yeah,
sharing germs.
I know. I
Um,
know.
we have a. Well, the one thing is, people seem to be very passionate about this topic. We have a lot of messages. So
Oh,
Annie says. But basically, what you said before about Italy and the quarantine, she said they're doing that in Portugal. She said Italy is totally locked down. Only pharmacy and grocery stores are open, which is pretty crazy. And she says, I can't get over the panic over toilet paper, which we were talking about before. Um, Maggie says she thinks the media is causing most of the hysteria. And
I
it,
think a lot of this.
it,
I
it,
agree
but
with
it
you.
is the media, but it also are the people buying into what the media says. So I think it's a combination of, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Lori says, "Go within, go to God." Um,
Let go and let God is what I always say.
uh, and Annie says, "Funny how they forget about all the suicides that happen in a day, and the cancer patients. Seems like everything is forgotten." And I was actually talking to a colonel from the military from where I work, and he was talking about the suicides of the soldiers when they come back and how high a rate it is, and how that's not addressed. And he wished there was awareness around that. So yeah, there are so many things like that that we're not aware of that take so many lives every day, and this. I think because people think they can be affected, right? People a lot of times are.
Well, the
Uh,
thing is that when somebody takes their own life, the family are affected, friends are affected, but it's not like it's a world, the world is affected. And I think as human nature is, well, ultimately it is about me sort of attitude. But I do wish that there was much more awareness of the things that are going on that we don't see but are happening every single day. And as I said at the beginning of this show, there are so many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people out there who are having to deal with crises every day. And to them, this coronavirus is a very small deal. in, you know, in comparison to what they go through every single day for years and years and years. And I again, perspective, putting things into perspective is I think very necessary and a very important way for us to deal with what is going on.
And we're coming up on time, but we have a couple more comments. Marcella is here, and she says hi, but she says thank you for sending healing to her brother. He has passed. Should actually has passed now from kidney failure, and she's sending healing prayers for that cough. Just loves you. Um, and Lori has one more comment. Awareness is responsibility. Your neighbors are your friends where I live. We hold each other up and love them and help where you can. Pathways of Love will never take you on a wrong path, no matter where it takes you.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, and then we have a lot of people saying, talking amongst themselves, but good to have a conversation with themselves as well.
Okay, well, we are out of time. So if you want to know any more about Everything is Attitude, please, you can either email Al at, you can email us info at everythingisattitude.com. You can email Al at alpisano.com. You can email me, Rosemary at rosemaryanaltair.com. If you have a subject that you'd like us to talk about, or if you'd like to come on the show and join in the discussion, we can. You don't even have to be on camera if you don't want to be. We can have you on talking, but not necessarily on camera. Or come on camera. We love to have guests. We love to have people, you know, talking about different subjects, and everything is attitude. You know, it really is. Everything is about attitude. So my last word is thank you, Al, for being my wonderful co-host. Thank you, all of you out there, for watching. Please, please, please have a very blessed rest of the day and have a very blessed weekend. Positive, in a very positive and a very joyful uh, way. Look for the joys in life. Trust that God has our well-being absolutely at heart.
Yes, and Rosemary, if people are, a lot of students are coming home or kids are going to be off, make use of that time, and that's a blessing too, right? You get to spend more time with your family, and
Yes,
uh,
yes, that's right. Of course, you're on your spring break out there, aren't you? New York have their spring break 2 weeks
next week,
ago.
I think, but I think they're going to add to the spring break. If I think that's what they're going to
Well,
do.
I think, schools will be closing down, but you know what? Then take it as an opportunity. In all bad things, whatever it is, there is always something good comes out of something bad. So try, if you can, be positive, have a great positive attitude, and look for the good in your lives. And if there is this terrible danger, and we're all in danger of it, which I don't believe we are, the best we can do is, instead of panicking and worrying, let's make the most of the time that we have. Let's make the most of who we have at our side. Let's make the most of our children, and let's show them the joy in life. I think that's my message. So thank you, Al, and thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, and we'll see you all again next week.
Bye.